Hello there everyone, and today for day 5 of my Mediavent calendar, I'm going to do a continuation of the previous part where I looked at Pac-Man games, and in this one we're going to take a look at some Namco games and Bandai Namco games that I have in general. So I won't be including the Pac-Man games in that, you can see them in the previous video, and I also won't be including my Dragon Ball Z titles either, because I'll do them in a separate video, even though I know very little on the Dragon Ball franchise as a whole. But still, let's go over forward and take a look. I also won't be including any Atari titles that Namco Bandai distributed, because, well, it's kind of self-explanatory. It was right after Atari Europe sold their assets off to Namco Bandai. But anyways, let's stop with my chitter-chatter and let's take a look. So the first title I'll show off is Soul Calibur 2 for the original Xbox. So Soul Calibur 2 is a very popular fighting game. It's the sequel to the original Soul Calibur arcade game and its Dreamcast port. And the special highlight of this game is that each platform it was released on, the PlayStation 2, the GameCube and the Xbox, had their own exclusive character. So in the Xbox version, the exclusive character is Spawn, the Todd McFarlane character. That's pretty interesting, I'd say. The PlayStation 2 version had a character from the Tekken lineup, but it was originally supposed to be Cloud Strife from Final Fantasy VII, but Namco couldn't work out a deal with Squaresoft, so that never came to be. So the game obviously developed and published by Namco, and in Europe it was published by Electronic Arts. Almost all of Namco's Xbox titles in Europe were published by Electronic Arts. Although, as you'd expect, there's no indication of it being published by them as such. And for some reason it lists it as a compact disc, even though this is a DVD. The Xbox doesn't use CDs for its format. But yep, it says on the back, Electronic Arts Hints and Tips Helpline. And there we are. So, yeah. And, as I've just said, I also have the GameCube version, which was instead published and distributed by Nintendo. And this one was actually the most popular version for a certain reason, and a pretty obvious one. The guest character was none other than Link from The Legend of Zelda. Sure enough, he wasn't exactly a powerful character in the game, but because it was Link, anyone would just buy anything with him on it anyway. So here we are. Yep, it says distributed by Nintendo. And then here's the inside of the case. There's no inserts with my copy. But yeah, it's got the same kind of things that you'd see in Nintendo published titles. I think this would have come with a Nintendo VIP 24/7 code of sorts, but my copy doesn't have one. And that's the common case with games distributed or published through Nintendo. Next game I have is R Racing, or R Racing Evolution. So this was released on all 3 platforms by Electronic Arts in 2004. It's a reboot of sorts of the Ridge Racer franchise. So it features a story mode and whatnot. I'd forgotten the main character's name, but she's on the front cover there. And then here's the back. The GameCube version of the game also included a copy of Pac-Man Vs., a multiplayer exclusive Pac-Man game, and in Europe it was the only way you could get it, interestingly enough. Whilst in the US you could also get it with a re-release of Pac-Man World 2 or with iNinja. And here we are. Once again, EA hotline. Here we are. I don't have any other games in the Ridge Racer franchise, strangely enough. Next up is iNinja from Argonaut Games. So this was one of their original creations, and then they sold the publishing rights to Namco Home Tech, because this was a deal done by the US division, and in Europe it was published by Sony, at the cost of it being a PlayStation 2 console exclusive. So that meant the Xbox and the GameCube versions weren't released over here. But there was a PC version that came out by Zoo Digital Publishing, but we don't need to talk about that. Here we are. There's the disc. Here's the back. Pretty fun game, actually. Argonaut has stated that they would happily remaster the game, if they can, that is, at some point. So the insert on the inside, so here's the manual. And there's also an ad for PlayStation 2 memory cards. A little like leaflet for the official PlayStation 2 magazine. And a pamphlet containing other Namco published games. There we go. So we got the G-Con 2 Light Gun, Time Crisis 3, Kill Switch, there's iNinja, Tekken 4, MotoGP 3, Reina, or whatever it is. Yeah, there we are, Kaina. Ace Combat, Distant Thunder, and Pac-Man World 2, and Smash Court Tennis 2 Pro Tournament. The funny thing I'd say is that I don't think I've ever seen this game before. Looks interesting. It's based on Kaina the Prophecy from Xylem Animation, one of the first few like adult animated films that they've done before I lost my body. Here we are, iNinja, an underrated platforming game. Next up is Soul Calibur 3, a PlayStation 2 exclusive. And this was also published by Sony Computer Entertainment in Europe. And it came out in 2005. So here we are. Here's the back. THX classified game. It starts off with a Gialga type, like a Gallagher variant of the THX intro and the deep note. So that's pretty nice. And this also has a game-breaking bug where it tends to erase itself or corrupt itself on the PS2 memory card. And the only way you can fix that is by reformatting a memory card, cleaning it out completely, and then making this the first game or the only game on there, which is very annoying. So here's the insert. And then there's a little pamphlet for Namco's 50th anniversary, which was kind of troubling for the company because, you know, the merger. So here's Tekken 5, Ace Combat Squadron Leader, G-Con 2, there's iNinja and Kill Switch again, MotoGP 3 and Smash Court Tennis Pro Tournament 2, and there we are, there's Soul Calibur 3. So yeah, it only lists down net titles that were published by Sony. It doesn't list down like any of the EA titles and whatnot. There we are, those are all the main Namco titles, and now let's go over to the titles that were done after the merger. And there's not much of variety in this, though. So here's Family Ski, or Wii Ski as it's known in North America. So it's a casual skiing, snowboarding, casual skiing game. And it was the first third-party title to support the Wii Balance Board, as it's promoted on the front. So it says all this. Yeah. So let's open it up. So here's the disc, a nice blue disc, and because Nintendo distributed this title in Europe, it's got a Club Nintendo leaflet in it. The code's not been scratched off, and obviously that wouldn't be functional anymore because Club Nintendo doesn't exist anymore. But it likely would have given out a good amount of stars. There's that. And then there's a little Wii leaflet that has other Nintendo published games in there. Wii Fit, Wii Music, Mario Kart Wii, Pro Evolution Soccer 2008, Super Smash Bros. Brawl, Super Mario Galaxy, Wario Land The Shake Dimension, Metroid Prime 3, The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess, Big Brain Academy, Mario Party 8, Animal Crossing Let's Go to the City. So, yeah, this leaflet's from after the game came out, but it's still in there anyway. So there's Family Ski, and then not long later, Namco Bandai released Family Ski and Snowboard in 2009. Very similar to the original game, but with snowboarding added to the mix. So now you can choose either if you want to ski or snowboard, known as Wii Ski and Snowboard in North America. But this time around, Nintendo didn't distribute this game. It was distributed by Atari Europe, as to be expected for most of these, most Namco Bandai titles at the time. So it says that right up there. So Nintendo wasn't like a silent distributor, whilst Atari were able to like secure that. Here's the manual, health and safety booklet, and then here we are. It just says Atari on the back, and then the inside has their customer service numbers information on it. Very interesting that they decided to go with Atari instead of Nintendo to publish the sequel. Yeah. Strange, but there you go. Now we're on to 2011 with Hello Kitty Seasons, a game from Sanrio that Namco Bandai Partners, which used to be Atari Europe, published. So my thought on this is it's obviously made for very, very young children. There's almost no skill at all in this. All the mini games you could play are, well, to get my drift, even if you didn't do anything, the characters will still say you did a great job even though you didn't do anything. So yeah, it's obviously meant for very young children. But it's still a good game regardless. It's got a bit of an Animal Crossing and My Sims feel to it. Here we are, here's the manual. It oddly enough doesn't use the standard Namco Bandai logo on it, but it's still on the back. So there you go. And they published it only in PAL territories. It was published by Zoo Digital in North America. So there we are. And then last but not least is Go Vacation. I remember seeing adverts for this a lot back in when it came out in November of 2011. And maybe what could explain why it was promoted a lot with other first-party Nintendo titles was that Nintendo distributed this game as well. Which is odd because at that time, you know, Namco Bandai Partners existed, but Nintendo must have been very interested in this and they just chose to publish and distribute it for Namco Bandai. So that's very interesting, and they globally published the Switch port of the game. And I think they co-own the copyright to it. So here we are. All sorts of different things you can play the game with. The Wii Motion Plus, the Nunchuck, the Balance Board, the Wii Zapper, which not many games support, the Wii Wheel, everything. The perfect mini-game selection for the Wii, and it came out in 2011. Oh yes. Oh yes indeed. Distributed by Nintendo. And here's the disc. And then here's the manual. So we got, leaflet. It says Wii U on there, because this must have been a later release of the game. And there's the Club Nintendo leaflet that Nintendo used for later titles. Go Vacation. And then the star pin says it expired in 2017, which is funny because Club Nintendo shut down before that date, I think. Here's the back. Bandai is a brand of Namco Bandai games, even though it's a Namco branded title. So they must have messed up there. There we are. So yeah, it's got information about Namco Bandai's thingies and whatnot. So it's not exclusively like, a Nintendo first-party game, but all of this is information you'd see on one of their titles anyway, so yeah. Let's go Vacation, a fun spin-off of the Family Ski franchise. Anyways, that's day 5 done. What could be next for day 6, I wonder? Well, you'll just have to find out next time. See you, everyone. Bye-bye.